Pass closes for 6 days every midwinter. That is, a rule older than the colony, older than the coastline guild, older than the relay station, older than the cabin at the top of the road. The storm comes in off the strait, hits the ridge, and dumps for 130 straight hours. After the second day, no traffic moves. After the fourth, the comm grid goes spotty. By the sixth night, you sit by the fire in the cabin and you listen, and that is all there is to do. I was on year 41 of hauling freight on Coral Vast. I had drawn the winter watch by lot, the way a senior captain does once she has put enough years on the books. Coastline Guild keeps a relay cabin at the high pass, and a senior runs it through the closure. You hold the radio. You log any skiff that tries to cross and turn back. You keep the fire going. You do not expect company. The pass is sealed. No one is supposed to be on it. The cabin is 2 rooms and a stove, heavy stone walls, a roof so steeply pitched the snow runs off in sheets, a porch that wraps around the windside so the door does not drift in. Inside, the long-haul rig, a steel-cased radio set 4 meters wide and 2 tall, power from a small geothermal vent under the floor, and a fire stove the size of a barrel. A pallet bed in the back room, a table, chairs, a cabinet of canned food and dried staples, a door to the storeroom, where the relay tools are kept, and where a hatch in the floor opens on a small shelter pit cut into the rock for the days when the cabin loses its which has happened more than once in living memory. My name is Hadlin Vey. I have been a coastline freight captain since I was 16. I have never married. I have no children. I keep my pension in the guild lockbox, and I do not keep many things in my cabin on the drumkin, my freighter, which was parked at the relay docks below the pass. I have hauled ore and grain and water and machinery and die rounds and tentacles and once, a long time ago, a coffin. I have been on Coral Vast for 32 years. I am 56. I have a small life. Burrit. The night. The skiff down. I was in the kitchen, eating bread from the cabinet and listening to the radio chase static. The storm was at its worst hour. Outside the window, the snow was moving sideways. Inside, the fire was banked low and steady. I had a hand on the radio dial and the other on the bread. I heard it through the chimney before I heard it anywhere else. A high, thin sound like wire singing. Then a second sound, concussion through the rock under the floor. Then nothing. I sat very still for a count of 5. Then I put down the bread, pulled my parka off the hook, and stood at the door, listening. A skiff falling apart in a storm makes a particular noise. Once you have heard it, you do not forget. The thin sing is the wing spar going. The concussion is the cabin hitting rock. I had heard one in my 20s, on a different moon, and I had pulled 3 of my own crew out of it. The radio was dead. Of course it was. The storm had eaten the band. The pass was sealed. There was no help coming up the road and no help going down. If a skiff had cracked on the ridge above me, whoever was in it had only me to come for them. I looked at the fire. I looked at the kit on the wall, the long parka over the short one, the lined gloves, the goggles, the climbing harness, the shovel, the med kit, the rope, the radio handset that would not reach the docks tonight, but might reach a man at a fire on the next ridge if the wind dropped. I dressed for cold work. I told the radio I was going out and would be back. The radio did not answer. Put my boots in the snowpack rack by the door and tied them. I opened the door. The wind took it out of my hand and slammed it against the porch rail. I closed it behind me. I picked up the lantern that swung off the porch beam. I started up the ridge. The ridge above the cabin runs north and east toward the pass. There is a kind of step about 300 meters above the relay, where the wind eddies and snow piles strange. That was the place. I knew the place. I had walked it in summer enough times to know the rock under the snow. I up the lantern in my left hand, and my right hand on the line I had run between cabin and ridge that morning. The way you do when you have been at the relay long enough to learn what nights are bad. The snow was knee-deep where the line held, hip-deep where the wind had moved it. The lantern threw a yellow disk around me that did not reach far. Climbed. The cold ate into me at the seams of the parka the way it always does after the first hour. I climbed. I smelled it before I saw it. Insulation. Spilled fuel. The chemical bite that a skiff makes when its starter coils blow. The smell came down the wind, in puffs, and the puffs got stronger. The wreckage was on the wind side of the step, half buried already. The skiff had come in nose down through the snow, lost a wing on a granite tooth, spun and broken in 2 pieces across the gully. The aft section was on fire under a layer of snow that the heat was steadily melting through, which meant the fire would not go out for a while yet, but would not spread. The forward section was crumpled around a rib of black rock. I went forward, not aft. Aft was crew quarters, and crew quarters in a working skiff do not usually carry anyone in a storm. I got to the forward section. The cabin door was sprung open from the impact. I held the lantern up. The pilot was dead. I could see that without going in. Head against the bulkhead, neck wrong. Second seat had a body in it that did not look any better. I checked anyway. There is a habit you keep in this work where you check. The second body was dead too. There was a small jump seat behind the pilot, the kind a deckhand uses on a short cross. There was a third body in it. Checked. Dead. I stood in the wind and the burning insulation and the snow, and I knew that was it. Then I heard the sound from the other side of the gully. It was a thin sound, not the wire sing of a wing spar, something living. A short rising note, breathed. I crossed the gully on my hands and knees because the wind was that bad above the step. The lantern light got me as far as the second piece of wreckage, and there at the base of it, half canned out of a survival pod the size of a coffin, was a small hand. I cracked the pod the rest of the way open with the lantern hook and my own gloved fingers. The child inside was small, pale ice blue skin with a fine pattern of darker frost veining along the temples and the back of the hands. Silver white hair in 2 short braids, pale gold eyes, open, pointed ears, a small dorsal ridge visible at the back of the neck where the tunic collar had slipped. A Vesh settler child, by the cut of the tunic. The pod's heater had run hot enough to keep her core temperature in her species safe band, only just. The frost veining on her hands had paled toward white, which on a Vesh meant cold creeping up. She was looking at me out of the pod with that quiet, unmoving Vesh look. She was not crying. Vesh do not cry, not the way we do. Ears tipped toward me, which I knew enough about Vesh to understand, was attention, not fear. She had her hands closed over something against her chest. I could see the shape of it under her fingers. A small carved figurine of a hooded walker, pale wood about as long as my thumb. I knelt in the snow beside the pod. I unbuckled the inner harness with one hand, I said, in the steady kind of voice I used to use with green deckhands. We are going to my cabin. It is warmer than this. Can you stand? She did not answer in words. She made a soft tonal hum, low in her throat, the kind of sound Vesh used to mean acknowledgement. Then she got herself out of the pod, very slowly, holding the carved walker in one hand and gripping my coat sleeve with the other. Her hand was very cold, even through the leather of my glove. I pulled the wool blanket out of my pack, the heavy gray cabin blanket from my own bunk. On the drumkin, 50 years old, the one I had taken into the cabin for the winter, and I wrapped her in it, put my arm under her knees and the other behind her back. I picked her up. She weighed almost nothing through the wool. I started back down the ridge in my own boot prints. She put her forehead against my collarbone at some point on the climb down and made a small hum, twice, and then she was quiet the rest of the way. I got the cabin door closed behind us at, I do not know what hour, late. The fire had banked nearly out. I worked it up with my left hand while still holding her in the blanket against my chest with my right. I sat her on the kitchen chair closest to the stove. I put the kettle on the iron. I closed the storm shutters on the windows, the lantern on its hook. She watched me from the chair. She did not move much. The blanket was around her shoulders and pooled in her lap. Hands were on the carved walker, and her eyes followed me around the room. I made tea. The dark kind is not tea, but a hot syrup of roots and bark that the Coastline Guild stocks at every relay for cold work recovery. Poured her a cup and put it in her hands. I poured myself a cup. I sat in the other chair and I looked at her across the table, and she looked at me, across the table. After a while she lifted the cup and drank from it. The frost veining on her hands flushed slightly warmer. I let out a breath I had not known I was holding. My name is Hadlin, I said. I said it slowly. Hadlin Vey, I am a freight captain. She watched me. After a little while she said something in a voice that was very small but very clear. Kessivel. Kessivel, I said. I knew enough Vesh names to know it was a child's daily name. The long form would have a family piece I was not entitled to until she or her people gave it to me. She nodded once, a human gesture she had picked up somewhere. The braids moved. Kiesevel, I said again. You are safe here. The door is closed. The fire is going. I'm going to make a place for you to sleep. And we will talk in the morning. She looked at the door. She looked at me. She made the small hum again. I took that for a yes. I made up the pallet bed in the back room with the wool blanket from the drumkin and 3 more I had pulled from the relay's blanket bin. I put the chair beside the bed, put the lantern on the floor beside it, on its lowest setting. I made her drink the rest of the tea. I unlaced her small boots and put them under the bed where they would dry but not too fast. I left her in her tunic and trousers, the same Vesh cut, dry and thick, suitable. I put her under the blankets. She put the carved walker on the pillow beside her head, with one hand on it. I sat in the chair beside the bed for what was probably an hour. The fire moved next door. The storm went on. She did not sleep for most of that hour. She watched me in the lantern. Then, very late, she closed her eyes. I waited until I was sure she was under. Then I went back to the kitchen and I stood at the table, and I put both hands flat on the wood, and I let the shake come out of my hands, which I had been holding off since the gully. I had 3 dead people in a skiff 200 meters up the ridge. I had a small living Vesh child asleep in my back room. The radio was dead. The pass was sealed. I was alone with her, and would be for at least 3 more days. I built the fire back up. I put a fresh pot of tea on. I sat in the kitchen chair with my back to the bedroom door, and I watched the door, the way you watch a door, when you are the only one keeping it closed. We had 4 days of cabin together before anything else happened. I am going to tell you about them, because they matter for what came after. She slept 11 hours that first night. I knew because I watched the clock and I did not sleep. When she came out of the back room in the morning, she had her braids redone. Clumsy but neat, and she was carrying the wool blanket and the carved walker. She set the walker on the kitchen table. She put the blanket around her shoulders. She climbed into the chair across from me. She looked at the bread I had on a plate. She looked at me. I said, "Bread," she said, a small, careful echo. I broke a piece off and put it on the table in front of her. She took it. She held it in both hands and tilted her head down. To it the way Vesh smell things. Not with the nose, but with a soft patch on the forehead. She smelled the bread for a long time. Then she ate it, slowly, one careful bite at a time. Then she ate 3 more pieces. I made her oat mash. She watched me make it. I dropped honey into hers because she was a child, and because I had honey in the cabinet. She watched the honey go down off the spoon as if it were a small miracle. She ate the oat mash. "Where are we?" she said, in Vesh pidgin, the trade tongue any settler child knew enough of to ask the basic things. Her words were small and grammatically simple but clear. "Coralvast," I said, "high pass. Relay cabin. The storm has us closed in for a few more days." She looked at the door. "The others, the skiff broke," I said. I said it plain. "I am sorry, Kiesevel. The others did not make it." She did not cry. She made a low sound, not a hum, a different sound, slower, almost like a long breath taken out. Her ears tipped down for the first time. She put her hands flat on the table on either side of her bowl. She closed her eyes. She did this for what was probably a minute. Then she opened her eyes and ate the rest of the oat mash. I have been around enough kinds of grief to know that one is a real one. The Vesh are not built like we are. They mourn for a long time, but they do not mourn loud. They take it in pieces, the way you cut wood for winter, one stick at a time, every day for as long as the winter is. I let her be quiet for the rest of the morning. I worked on the radio. The band was still eaten by storm, but if I cleaned the contacts and reseated the harmonics card, it would come back clearer. When the storm broke, she watched me work. After a while she came over and sat beside the rig and watched my hands. "What is this?" she said. "A radio," I said. "It lets me talk to people far away. When the storm breaks." She looked at the dials. She did not touch. She made the soft hum again. Acknowledgement. I worked. She watched. Then she went and got the carved walker off the kitchen table and brought it back, and sat with it in her lap while she watched me work. By the second day I had her name long form, Kiesevel Tos. Family had been Vesh settlers on a moon called Drevath, not the one I was on, 3 days out by sea. Parents and older brother had been in the skiff. They had been moving to a new settlement on Coralvast that was less crowded, and where Tos relatives had homesteaded a parcel 3 winters earlier. The skiff had been chartered through a Calderon freight broker. That detail I asked about. and asked about again. Because the Toss family was modest and the Calderon brokers were cheap. The skiff had taken a different route than the one the family had paid for. The pilot had not been Vesh. Casey Vell had not slept easy on the trip. I listened to her tell me this in small pieces over 2 mornings. She did not have a complete story. She had a child's view of it. Her mother said this. Her father said that. The pilot said the wrong thing about the route. Her brother said it would be all right. Then, there was an alarm. Then there was the survival pod her brother strapped her into and said, "Stay in this no matter what." And then the skiff was breaking around her, and then it was very cold, and then I was there. I did not press for what I did not need to know. I made notes in my head. The Calderon broker, the route change, the pod that was the only one launched. That last one was the piece that did not sit right. A skiff has 8 pods. The Calderon broker, a non-Vesh pilot. A Vesh child in the only pod that fired. The smell of that was as bad as the burning insulation had been. I did not say any of this to Cassie Vell. I said, "I am going to make pancakes. The honey is yours." I had a lot of years of hiding what I knew from people who did not need to know it yet. I used those years now. By the 3rd day she was talking more. Not freely. Vesh children do not talk freely the way ours do, but more. She watched the storm out the windside window. She told me the names of the wind shapes in Vesh, which were words I had never heard, soft consonants and held vowels. I taught her words for the things in the cabin: stove, kettle, lantern, blanket, walker, and she taught me the Vesh for the same. The walker was Velimtus, which I gathered meant something like winter walker, or hooded one, or quiet one. She told me the figurine had been carved by her great-aunt, who lived 2 winters drift from her father's family hearth. She told me it kept the cold away from her when she carried it. I did not tell her. The figurine was a small piece of pale wood, and the only thing keeping the cold away was the wool blanket and the stove, I said. Then we keep it close. She nodded. She had a small game she played, on the kitchen floor, with the cabin's heat bricks. The bricks were small flat-fired clay tablets that came up warm from the geothermal vent. Coastline Guild relays kept a tray of them by the door for cold work crews. Cassie Vell laid them out in patterns. She moved them in a kind of order. She would look at me and gesture at the floor, and I would sit cross-legged across from her, and we would move bricks in turn. I worked out the rules over an hour. Each player moves 3 bricks per turn, 1 warm, 1 cool, 1 neither, and the goal was to surround the other player's center brick without crossing your own line. I lost the first 3 games. I won the 4th. She laughed once, a small, soft laugh, the only one I heard from her in the cabin during those 4 days. Then she beat me 5 times in a row. I kept the firewood stacked. I kept the storm shutters tight. I checked the radio every 2 hours. I made meals she could eat. Not bread and water, but bread and oat mash and dried fish, reconstituted in stock and honey on what I had. I let her sleep when she wanted to sleep. I sat beside the bed at night, with the lantern on its lowest setting until she was asleep, because the wind made the cabin creak in ways her people had not built her to know. And a strange creaking at night is a thing a child remembers. I did all this without thinking about it. I had been a senior captain long enough to know how you keep something alive on a cold pass. It is not different for a child than for a deckhand. You keep the fire going, you keep the door closed. You give them food they can eat and tea they can drink, and a place to put their hands when their hands need a place to be. But somewhere on the 3rd day I noticed. I was not thinking about the dock at the bottom of the pass, where the drumkin was waiting, the way I had been thinking about it on the 1st day. I was thinking about the cabin. I was thinking about what we would do after the storm broke and the road opened, thinking, and I did not realize until I caught myself, about the small Vesh settler parcel, 3 days east where Cassie Vell's relatives lived, and whether I could spare a day to take her there myself, rather than handing her off to a coastline patrol. I caught myself thinking it, and I stopped. I did not let myself think it again that day. The 4th day was when the radio came back. The storm had been breaking since the small hours. By mid-morning, the wind had dropped enough that I could hear the ridge again. The long groan of pressure releasing in the rock, falling sand sound of snow shifting on the porch roof. I cleaned the radio's harmonics card a 2nd time with a scrap of cotton. I sat at the kitchen table with a fresh tea and turned the dial down through the bands. Coastline Guild's docks channel came in first. Half static but readable. Two captains arguing about loading rotations at the bottom of the pass. I listened to them long enough to know that the storm had broken on schedule and that the pass would reopen by dawn the next morning. I logged it. I did not break in. I dialed up the bands. The long-haul authority channel came in next. Clean enough, routine traffic. I logged the timestamp. Then a band I rarely used. A chartered company emergency hail, the kind of band a small private outfit uses when it wants a quick hand from a line relay, opened with a Calderon call sign and a writ of recovery designation. I sat very still. The voice on the band was male, professionally clipped. Coral Vast Pass Relay. This is Calderon Reclamation Authority. Unit 311, Senior Officer Breck Madden. We are 5 hours out from your position by ground runner. We have a writ of recovery for a Vesh miner. Chartered courier. Designation skiff DRA 412. Terminated transit on the ridge above your relay during the closure. We have its terminal signal located at your coordinates. We have legal jurisdiction over the miner. Please confirm receipt. Please confirm any survivors logged at your station. Please prepare for our arrival. Repeat. I did not pick up the handset. I let him say it again. Then a third time. I logged the timestamp of each. I logged the call sign. I logged his name. Then I dialed down off the band, and I sat at the kitchen table, and I looked at the wall. A writ of recovery is a real thing on the colony routes. Treaty custody claims do exist. Some of them are clean and decent. Most of them are not. The Calderon Reclamation Authority I had never heard of by that exact name. The Calderon brokers were the same brokers who had chartered Casey Vell's skiff. The same brokers who had routed it through a non-Vesh pilot. The same brokers whose skiff had launched exactly one pod and lost 3 dead in the cabin. A writ of recovery on a Vesh miner whose family had paid for transit to a toss parcel on Coral Vast, signed by a Calderon officer whose company had chartered the broker, whose skiff had killed the miner's family. That writ was a piece of paper. I knew what kind of piece of paper. I had hauled enough kinds of cargo in 40 years to know which papers were clean and which were dressed up theft. The clean ones do not show up 5 hours behind their own wreck. I sat at the table and I looked at the bedroom door, behind which Casey Vell was lying on the pallet, with the wool blanket pulled to her chin and the carved walker on her pillow, ears tipped down in the sleep position. I looked at the radio. I looked at the door to the porch. I looked at the storeroom door and the floor hatch under it. I had been a senior captain for 36 years. I had refused cargo, had refused crew. I had refused once a contract from a junior partner of the same company that was now 5 hours from my door. A small life. I preferred it. I did not bring myself into things that were not mine. This was now mine. I got up, poured the rest of the tea down the sink. I cleaned the kettle. I put 2 more logs in the stove. I went into the bedroom, and I sat on the edge of the pallet, and I watched Casey Vell sleep for a count of 100. Frost veining on her cheeks was a warm, dark blue. She was healthy. She was warm. She was alive. I went back to the kitchen. I put on my work coat, cleared the table. I had 4 hours. I worked in the order I would have worked a cold load. The way a senior captain works when the contract has gone sideways and the dock time clock is running. First, the door. The coastline relay cabins are built to keep weather out, which means they are built to keep most things out. The outer door is 2 hands thick, plated, hinged on the inside. I dropped the iron drop bar I had not used in 20 years across its inner cradle. The bar settled with the small, heavy sound of a thing returning to where it was made to be. Second, the windows. The storm shutters were already pulled. I checked the latches. Third, the radio. I tuned it to the Coastline Guild's long-haul emergency channel, and I left the handset on the table. I keyed the relay channel and I logged a single text burst. A senior captain's flag, the cabin's coordinates. Single character. S, for sanctioned way station declared under storm emergency. Any coastline ear hearing that ping would know it meant, I am invoking the relay protocol. Come if you can. It was a thing I had read about as a young captain and never sent. Fourth, the storeroom. I opened the hatch in the floor under the storeroom door. The shelter pit beneath was 2 meters deep, a meter wide, lined with insulated stone. There was a small bench cut into one wall. The guild stocked it with a battery lantern, 3 thermal wraps, a flask of water, and a packet of dried mash. I added 2 wraps from the cabin, and a second flask of tea. I climbed back out and I closed the hatch and stood on it. It seated flush with the floor under the storeroom door, which I had not opened in 3 years and which a stranger looking for a child would not think to open even if he came inside. Fifth, HFY. I went to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the pallet. I put my hand very gently on her shoulder. Her ears tipped before her eyes opened. Then she was awake. HFY, I said. I need you to listen to me. People are coming. They are not your people. They have papers that say they get to take you back to the brokers who sent your family on the skiff. I do not believe their papers. I am not going to give you to them. She watched me with the gold eyes, very steady. She made the soft hum. Acknowledgement. I am going to put you in a small safe place under the storeroom floor. You will have water and a wrap and a lantern. You will hear me through the floor. If I tell you stay, you stay. If I tell you come out, you come out. If you hear anyone but me, you stay. Do you understand? She nodded the human nod. She made the hum again. Then she said very quiet, you will not give me to them. No, I said. The carved walker in my hand. She closed my fingers around it. She said, then you carry the vellum twos. I do not need it here. The small pale piece of wood in my palm. I did not say anything. I put the walker in the chest pocket of my work coat. I picked her up in the wool blanket, and I carried her to the storeroom. And I lowered her into the pit, and I gave her the lantern and the flask and the wraps, and I closed the hatch. I stood on the hatch for a long count. Then I went back to the kitchen and I waited. The ground runner came up the road at the 4th hour, exactly on time. I had taken the long-haul authority channel back down to a whisper, but I had left it open. I had banked the fire to its medium working state. Visible smoke from the chimney would have told them I was home, even without the relay logs. I had put the kettle on. I had laid the medkit and a small flat tool roll on the table within reach of my right hand, as if I were doing routine cabin work, which I sort of was. I heard the runner come up the last switchback. Then I heard the brakes catch in the snow. Then I heard 3 sets of boots on the porch. A knock. It was a polite knock, professional. Kind a man delivers when he expects to be inside in 30 seconds. I went to the door. I did not open it. I stood beside it. I said, in the steady voice, this is a Coastline Guild-sanctioned way station, under storm emergency protocol. State your business. A pause. Then the man on the other side of the door. Captain Vesh? Senior Officer Breck Madden. Calderan Reclamation Authority. I hailed you on the chartered emergency band an hour ago. Did you receive my transmission? I logged it, I said. State your business. We have a writ of recovery for a Vesh miner of the family Os named HFY. Our courier skiff terminated above your relay during the closure. The miner was a passenger. We have legal jurisdiction. We are here to retrieve her. What is the writ number? I said. He read it out. He had a clear voice, used to being obeyed. Issuing authority, I said. He told me. A bureau on a different colony moon 3 jumps away. Effective date, he told me. Receiving authority on Coral Vast. He paused. Then he gave me a name. I did not know that name. There is a coastline registry of recognized authorities on every colony. I had a copy in the cabin's filing drawer. Captain Vesh, he said. Appreciate your thoroughness. But the storm closure is lifting. Your relay is back on grid, and I have a wounded crew at my back from clearing the pass to reach you. We need to come in. The miner is in fragile health. We need to assess her. The miner is not in fragile health, I said. She is asleep. She is warm. She is fed. She has no injuries. I logged her status into the long-haul authority band 2 hours ago. Which was true. My burst had included it. A different pause. Captain, respect, we will be coming in. With respect, I said. You will not be. I let that sit on the porch. Then I said, stand by. I am going to read your writ on file. I will be a minute. I went to the filing drawer, pulled the coastline registry of recognized authorities for Coral Vast. I opened it. I read down the list. The name Breck Madden had given me as the receiving authority on Coral Vast was not on the list. Not under that bureau. Not under any bureau. Coastline registry is updated yearly. Mine was current. I closed the registry. I went back to the door. Officer Madden, I said, the receiving authority you named is not registered on Coral Vast. The writ is improperly served. That is a clerical issue, he said. It can be cured at the dock office. We will come in, take custody of the miner, and remediate the paperwork at the docks. The writ is improperly served, I said. Under colony custody law, any defect in service voids transfer. You will not take custody of the minor. A longer pause. Then I heard him talk to one of his men, low, off the door, not meant for me. Captain Vey, he said. Open the door. No, I said. A different voice, lower, older. We are freezing out here, Captain. Be reasonable. Wait in your runner, I said. It has heat. I will not open this door. A scrape on the porch. Someone trying the latch. The drop bar held. I went to the long-haul handset on the table. I keyed it open. I said into the live band very clearly, Coastline Guild Long Haul. This is Coral Vast High-Pass Relay, Senior Captain Hadlin Vey. I am declaring a sanctioned way station under Storm Emergency Protocol, Section 12. 3 Calderon officers are attempting to force entry to retrieve a Vesh minor in my care. Writ of recovery presented is improperly served, receiving authority unregistered on Coral Vast. I am holding the door. Request authority response. Requesting coastline relay support. Time stamped. Repeating. I repeated it. I logged it. I knew what would happen on the authorities' end the moment a senior captain invoked Section 12. Section 12 was the line a coastline captain crossed when she was prepared to lose the contract, the ship, the pension, the life of small things she had built. There had been 5 of us on Coral Vast who had ever invoked it. 3 of them are dead. 2 of them are in their cabins. I am the 3rd in their cabins. Outside on the porch, Breck Madden heard me transmit. He went very quiet. Then I heard the click of a sidearm leaving a holster. I had a tool roll on the table, the flat one. The long-haul radios are old, and they need a particular kind of long-handled spanner to seat the harmonics card, and the spanner sits in a leather sleeve on the tool roll within reach of my right hand. The spanner is 42 centimeters of cold steel, but I had also kept on a high shelf above the door, behind the lantern oil tin, a small old service sidearm from the days when a senior freight captain on a long jump might need one. I had not taken it off the shelf in 12 years. It still had a clip. I had been a freight captain a long time. I had not been only a freight captain. I lifted it off the shelf. I checked the clip. I stood beside the door, sidearm low and ready. Captain Vey, Madden said, step away from the door. We are coming in to retrieve the minor. Officer Madden, I said. The minor is not yours to retrieve. Stand down or face authority response. You are an old woman in a cabin, he said, which was a thing he should not have said. The next part is, the part the camera does not stay on. I will keep it short. He fired through the door. The door did not open. The slug stopped in the iron-banded oak inside. I do not know which of the 3 of them fired the second shot. Because I was already moving along the inner wall to the rear side firing slit the cabin has, is a thing the relay cabins have, because they were built in a frontier age, and a senior captain, on-duty winter watch is a senior captain who knows about the slit. I fired through the slit. I do not enjoy describing what happens at close range when a senior officer of a chartered company fires through a sanctioned way station door and a coastline captain on Section 12 answers him from the firing slit. The exchange was not long. Madden went down on the porch with a wound to the leg that he would need a surgeon for, but that he would live through. The deputy named Ulvar, the lower older voice, broke for the runner and made it. The 3rd one, Ostro, was wounded in the shoulder and surrendered on the porch with his hands out on the planks, calling out his name and his serial. I did not open the door. I held position at the slit. I called out to the porch, Ostro. Slide your sidearm to the edge of the porch and your hands behind your head. You will live. Madden, do not move. You will bleed faster. Ulvar. If you turn the runner around and come back without a weapon, I will tell the authority you came back. If you do not, I will tell them you did not. Ulvar did not come back. He drove down the pass at unsafe speed. The runner went off the road at the 3rd switchback. The authority found it in the morning. Ulvar made it down on foot. He surrendered at the docks. I held the slit and the door until the authority air skimmer came in over the ridge. 90 minutes later, in the first light of dawn, with the storm at last fully broken, the authority team came in with 2 senior officers, 1 coastline, 1 colony, and a medic for the wounded. They went to Madden first and stabilized him for the skimmer. They took Ostro into custody. They walked through the cabin, and they read my logs, and they read the writ Madden had been carrying. They confirmed the receiving authority was unregistered and the writ was forged. They went up the ridge with a recovery team. and they brought the 3 dead in the skiff down by the morning. The coastline senior, captain I had known for 20 years named Velo Marn, sat in my kitchen at the same table I had sat at 4 hours earlier and read my logs and, said Hadlin. Velo, I said. He looked at the door. He looked at the floor of the storeroom, he said, in a low voice. Where is she? Under the storeroom, I said. I will bring her up. I went to the storeroom. I lifted the hatch. Vel was sitting on the bench in the small wash of lantern light, the wool blanket around her shoulders, her ears tipped up. Frost veining on her cheeks was warm. She looked up at me. They are gone, she said. They are gone, I said. I lifted her out of the pit. I carried her to the kitchen and sat her on the chair, across from Velo Marn. He looked at her. She looked at him. He had 3 daughters, and he knew what to do, which was nothing, just be still and let her look. After a long minute, she made the small acknowledgement and hum. Then she ate the heel of bread he slid across the table to her. The colony officer worked through the rest of it in the next 4 hours. The writ Madden had carried was a forgery, a Calderon internal product designed to move Vesh miners out of settler routes and back to Calderon. Broker accounts on a different colony, where they would be assigned under fixed-fee household contracts to families that wanted Vesh house staff. The family transit had been priced cheap because the skiff had not been routed where the family thought it was routed. The skiff had launched 1 pod on purpose because 1 miner was the asset. The rest had been collateral. The Calderon Reclamation Authority was, 3 days later, suspended by the colony courts pending criminal investigation. Within a year it was wound up. Within 2, 4 officers of its parent broker were in colony prison. That was the law working slowly, which is how the law works. The faster thing was the morning at the cabin. The colony officer asked me what arrangements I had for the miner. I said I had none. He asked me what the miner's nearest family was. I said, a toss parcel 3 days east of the relay, the parcel her own family had been heading to. He said, that family will be notified. He said, do you object to the miner remaining in your temporary care while we notify the family and arrange? Escort, I said. I do not object. He stayed for the rest of the morning and wrote the temporary order. I signed it. I had signed freight manifests with the same hand for 40 years. The signature came out the same as always. He left at noon. Velo Marn stayed for the rest of the day. He helped me clear the porch. He helped me carry the dead out of the wreck on the ridge and lay them on the bed of the skimmer for transport to the docks. He did not ask me any questions about the slit or the door. He had stood at his own door once, on a different moon, 22 years before, and he had not opened it either. That is a thing senior captains know about each other, without ever needing to say. Velo left at evening. The skimmer took the dead. The cabin was quiet again. Kessie Vel and I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after Velo left. The fire was banked. The kettle was on. She had her hands flat on the table on either side of her bowl. Her braids were redone. She had redone them herself in the storeroom while she waits under the floor. I took the carved walker out of my chest pocket. I set it on the table between us. You carried it through, she said. I carried it through, I said. She looked at it. She looked at me. She slid it across the table back to me. I do not need it back, she said. You keep it. You are the Velumtus now. You walked the cold for me. Carving belongs to who walked the cold. I did not know what to say to that. I sat for a long time. Then I took the walker, and I put it back in the chest pocket of my work coat. I kept the work coat on for the rest of the night, and into the next morning, which was unusual for me at the cabin. The toss parcel sent word the next morning that they would receive Caseyville whenever she was ready to travel, and that they wished to extend their gratitude to the coastline captain, who had kept her warm through the closure. I read the message out loud to her. She listened, then she said, I want to go to my aunt's. Then she said, will you come with me? I said, I will take you. I said it without thinking about the contract on the drumkin, or the dock time clock, or the pension, or the small life. I said it the way you say a thing when the thing is already decided in your bones. We took 2 days getting to the toss parcel. The pass had to clear. The runner had to be cleaned out. The dead had to go down the mountain first. We sat in the cabin and ate honey and oat mash, and we played the heat brick game. And she won most of it. Toss aunts met us at the parcel gate. They were 3 women in plain Vesh winter dress, gray, blue, and silver and white, with the family name carved on the gatepost in the old Vesh letters. They received Kesivel with the long quiet ceremony the Vesh use for a child, turning to family. They did not weep, which is not their way. They made the long deep humming the Vesh use for joining, which is the closest thing they have to weeping. They turned to me last. The oldest of the three put her hand on my forearm. She said, "Shh," in slow precision. "We are told you held the door." I said, "I held the door," she said. "Then you are inside the toss hearth from this day. The child wants you, you come. If you want the child, you come. The hearth is open to you for the rest of your winters." I said, "I will come." The middle one then took the carved walker out of my chest pocket. She did it carefully, with permission in her eyes, which I gave with a small nod, and she put it back in Kesivel's small hands. She said something to Kesivel in Vesh I did not understand. Kesivel nodded. Then Kesivel came across the gate path, and she put the walker back into my chest pocket herself with both small hands. "You are the Velamtus," she said. "It is yours." I closed my hand over the chest pocket. I did not say anything. I drove back to the cabin alone that evening. The runner moved well in the cleared snow. The pass was open. The drumkin was waiting at the dock. The contract was waiting. The 42nd winter of hauling freight was waiting. I sat in the cabin that night with the door closed and the fire low. I had a cup of the dark tea. I had the carved walker on the table in front of me. The cabin made its small creaking sounds. The fire did its small work. The next winter I took the watch again, at the same cabin on the high pass. Kesivel came for the closure days. Ants brought her up the road and left her with me for the 6 days of the storm, and came back for her after. We sat in the cabin and we played the heat brick game. We ate oat mash and bread. She got taller, her Vesh pigeon got better, my Vesh got passable. She taught me the long winter songs her great aunt had carved the Velamtus. For I am 62 now. I have signed permanent guardianship paper that her aunts requested and the Coastline Guild approved, which means she is mine to keep as the toss hearth permits. And the hearth has permitted. I have not stopped hauling freight, because a freight captain does not stop, but I run shorter routes now, and I winter at the cabin, and Kesivel winters with me half the season and, with her aunts the other half. The small life is not a small life anymore. It is the right life. Keep the walker in the chest pocket of my work coat. I do not take it out. I do not need to. It is a small pale piece of wood. It does not keep the cold away by itself. The cold is kept away by what the walker stands for. Someone walked the cold, and someone else gave them the carving for it, and the carving sits in the pocket of the one who walked. That is the whole of it. The cabin door, the one with the slug in it from Madden's first shot, is still the cabin door. I have not replaced the wood. The slug is set deep in the grain just below the inside drop bar cradle. I touch it sometimes when I bar the door at night. It is the small mark of the night the cabin did not open. I close the door from inside. I close it the way you close a door that is a home. That is the whole of it.